Hi and welcome to another video. In this video I want to take a look at logic gates. If you're familiar with electronic circuits, you'll be familiar with logic gates. We're not going to go into the logic gates in detail. What I want to do in this video is to actually show you how to use the logic gate node or nodes. And these are the ones here, the AND and OR. Now it's actually quite a few add-ons you can use for logic gates. This is the basic one. It's a very simple one, just has two gates, the AND and the OR, which is more than enough for you to work with. But what I want to do in this video is show you how to use these gates. And this follows on from the fact that So what I want to do in this video is actually show you how to use these particular nodes. So let's just have a quick overview of logic gates, and there's several of them. There's 7 in total. We're going to concentrate on the AND and the OR gate, and this is the AND. And this, in electronic circuits, they have a symbol, and this is the symbol. But what I want to point out is the inputs. We have several inputs. In this case we have 2, but we can have more than 2 inputs, but generally 2 inputs. And this is the truth table. So for an AND gate, we have a 1 coming out of it when both inputs are set to 1, otherwise it's a 0. Now in electronic circuits we're dealing with 1s and 0s, or plus 5 volts and 0, or plus 3 volts and 0, depending on the circuitry. But in node-red, we're going to be dealing with true and false. So coming out of the gate will either be true or be false. Now, going into the gate, we can have various things. We can have a string, we can have a number, we can have a Boolean value, we can have true or false, and we can actually take action based on that input. So let me show you how that works, and let me show you a couple of flows. Now, the reason I showed you the symbol before, and the reason I showed you the physical gate, is the fact that in our node we only have a single input. Now, we use the topic property of the input to differentiate between these two. So this is basically input 1 with a topic of test 1, and this is input 2 with a topic of test 2. So in the gate itself we have to configure this. So if we look at the gate, and we've got test 1, which is the topic test 1, if the message payload is true, and test 2, if the message payload is true, then we add those two together and we should actually come out with a true. So if both payloads are true, the output should be a true. So if we look at here, I'm actually injecting a topic test 1, and I'm injecting a value of true. And if I click on this, and over on here I've got a Boolean of false. Can you see that there? It doesn't send it on the payload. The payload is actually the input payload. Now if I do click on test 2, now we have a Boolean of true. Now you need to operate both. Now in a physical circuit this would be 2 physical inputs, but in node-red they are 2 topics. Now if I set this one to false, then coming out and trigger it, and coming out of here we should see a false value. Now that is using basic true and false for the inputs. Now we don't have to use true and false, and the second example shows you that now. We're using topics test 1 and test 2, but this time our payload is going to be greater than 19 or less than or equal to 23. So if both of those conditions are met, then the output is true. If they aren't met, then the output is false. So let's clear that. So we're sending in 20 and we're sending in 20 on both inputs. So we send in the 20, we're coming out false, and we send in 20 and we're coming out true. So that's both of those conditions are satisfied. So let me just go to this one here, We need it to be greater than 19, which is currently 20, so we'll set it now to 12, and we inject it, and we see we've got a false coming out of here, a Boolean false. Now we can do the same with the OR function. Now with the OR function, if we just go back to the logic, the truth table, we get a 0 if both inputs are 0, but otherwise we get a 1. So basically when we've got our inputs, if either of those inputs is actually a 1, then the output is always a 1. So when we look at our function here, we don't actually need to inject both inputs to actually get a result, and we'll see that in a second. So if I just look at the OR gate and the setup of it, so again 2 topics. This time the message payload is equal to ABC, and test 2, the message payload is equal to ABC. So if one of those message payloads is equal to ABC, then we've got a true condition. So I'm sending in ABCD here, and I'm sending ABC1 in here. So let me click on it, and let me click on it again. Nothing's happening. Now nothing's happening because what I've set here is this little tick box here, true restriction. So I'm only going to output if it's actually true. In both of those cases it was false, so nothing came out. So let me just set this one back to ABC and inject it, and now we've got a true coming out. So that's working okay. Now what I won't demonstrate, but I will just show you quickly here, is that we've got 2 conditions here, but we can add a third and we can add a fourth just by clicking on the add button here and filling out the appropriate. Sorry, I clicked on too many times. I'm not going to fill it out anyway, so just cancel it. But that's all you need to do, is click on the add button down at the bottom. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is this basically in action. Now if you go to this tutorial on the site, and there's a little question, there's a little worked example on the site, and basically it's a thermostat. So on my water system I have a valve that actually lets the water out if the temperature exceeds I think it's 65 and the pressure exceeds 6 bars. So it's a safety valve. So if those 2 conditions are met, then the valve opens. If they're not met, then the valve stays closed. So it's just a safety valve on the central heating system. Now I'm simulating that here. What I'm doing here is I've got an AND gate again. So if the temperature is greater than 65, then that's going to be true, and if the pressure is greater than 6, then that's going to be true. And if both of those are true, then I want the output to be true and the valve to operate. One thing I didn't mention before is the topic. The coming out of here, we have a topic here. It's not the topic that we send in. We just make up the topic coming out, so it's not dependent on the input topics. These are dependent on the input topics, but not the output topic. You can see here, or you'll see when I actually trigger this. So instead of injecting them, what I've got here is a random number generator. So I'm going to generate a random temperature, and I'm going to generate it in the range of 60 to 70, and I'm going to generate a pressure in the range of 5 to 7. And I'm using the status node here to actually fill it out as red and green and open and close, so we can see it. I could have used the dashboard, but I don't want to keep swapping between screens, so this means we can see it here rather than having to go to a dashboard. So if I just inject here, now a valve stays closed. We've got a temperature of 63 and a pressure of 5. Then we've got a temperature of 64, pressure of 6, so it still stays closed because both of those conditions aren't met. and now 65 and 5 again stays closed. 64 and 6 stays closed. 65, I can't remember, 68 I think that is, 5, but it stays closed. Okay, keep going, and there we go. We've got 65 and 6, and so we open the valve. And if I look at the thing here, then the topic coming out is valve, and the Boolean is true. So we can use this now to actually open up our physical valve. Let's just do it again. Let's clear that and do it again. And this time we're 60 and 7, and so we close the valve because both conditions aren't met. Okay, that's it. Hopefully that is enough for you to be able to use these nodes yourself. And I say there's lots of other different logic nodes that you can actually install, but these are the basic ones. I think the actual, it was written about 9 years ago. I'll just find it here so show you, but I will put a link in the description. Sorry, I will put the name in the description. Let's have a look at the palette. And here it is. It's called the Boolean gate. You can see it here. There it is there. Okay, so that's it. A very quick video how to use the logic nodes in Node-RED. If you've got comments, then please leave them below. If you like the video, then click on the like button. And if you'd like to be notified of new videos, then you can click on the notification button. Until next time, goodbye.